Hello and welcome everyone to Kumi Now. Thank you for joining us for this latest online gathering as we talk about the disproportionate effect that conflict has on women. My name is Hannah Redekop. I'm the Communications Associate with Christian Peacemaker Teams, and I'm calling in today from Amman, Jordan. So before we start, I'd like to remind you that our webinar is being broadcast live on Facebook and will be posted to YouTube. So if you want to make sure that your photo does not appear online, please turn off your cameras now. We would also love it if you could quickly share one of the links that are being shared in the chat so that others may join. We hope that you will find this session interesting and informative. I'd like to start by having everyone you'll be seeing today on the screen introduce themselves. Let's start with Omar and then Sandrine.
Thank you, Hannah. My name is Omar Harami, and I am calling from Sabil, Jerusalem. It's a pleasure to be with you. Sandrine?
Hello, everyone. I'm Sandrine Amir. In Arabic, it's Amir, because we have the A. So I'm Sandrine Amir, carrying a French name. And I'm a Palestinian living in Jerusalem. I'm a Palestinian Christian, Catholic, and I live in the Christian Quarter. I don't know how many of you have visited that place. I feel privileged, of course, to be there and living there. My family have been living there for more than 400 years in the same quarter, not the same house. Currently, I'm occupying the position, currently means the last 10 years. I'm occupying the position of the Executive Director of the Young Women Christian Association of Jerusalem. We are located in Sheikh Jarrah, the hotspot in the news. And prior to that, I have been always a volunteer at the YWCA, believing in this organization mission to empower women and youth. My mother was a student here at the college of the YWCA, both aunts, and my mom was also a board member. So that was how the legacy continued. I come from a law and human rights educational background, alongside with a management, advocacy, and gender professional background. As all of you, I'm sure we are all committed to the promotion and realization of gender equity, women empowerment, tolerance, and cultural diversity, and justice above all. I'll stop here, and I'm happy to answer any in the Q&A, any questions related to my background. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sandrine. Looking forward to it. Now, usually at this point, we start with our activism survey. However, in the past few days, the Israeli government has attacked the Palestinian human rights community by labeling 6 organizations as terrorist organizations. So today we're going to skip the survey, and instead we'll be starting with a special activism time to support these 6 organizations. So Omar, if you could just join and please explain the situation and what we'll be doing.
Thank you, Hannah. I'm sure everybody or most of you have already heard that the Israeli Prime Minister and the Defense Minister have labeled or declared that 6 out of the 6 leading Palestinian human rights organizations are under terrorist list because of allegations that they are part of the PFLP, one of the political parties in Palestine. a claim that the 6 different human rights organizations denounce. Like Al-Haq, Damir, Bisan Center, and other organizations that many of you have already read the reports, or many of the international community are aware of them. This is extremely troubling for the Palestinian civil society. This is a few years ago, there was a similar allegation and a problem with the World Vision, where they claim that the World Vision cooperates or has cooperated or had ties with Hamas, something that the Israeli government did not prove or provide evidence. For organizations and for the nonviolent movement in Palestine and Israel, we see that international law is our main tool to advocate for an end of injustice and the military occupation. So Ryan, if you may share on the screen the action of today. So on the left of the screen, you can see Damir, which works with defending Palestinian prisoners, Al-Haq, one of the oldest human rights organizations in Palestine, started in the 1970s, Defense of Children International in Palestine, the Union of Agricultural Work Committees, Bisan Center for Research and Development, and Union of Palestinian Women Committees. Israel has included these 6 as, or considers these 6 organizations to be terrorist organizations without really providing proof or anything to back their claims. So we would like you, already these organizations have already announced that many people have already started emailing them. So we acknowledge that we encourage you to write to the different organizations. You can find their emails by research on Google, or I think we will have them available for you. And just give them, I mean, it is raise their spirits. This defamation is going to affect the organizations. People will start, after Israel made this claim, people might be more hesitant to use their reports, or maybe more encouraged to use their reports, or even to affiliate or to support these organizations. So please, as people who are already committed and connected to the struggle in Palestine and Israel for human rights and international law, so you must be aware of some on a personal level, or maybe all of these organizations. We encourage you to write them positive emails and just say that it is, you know them, you respect their work, and you encourage them to keep on doing what they're doing. FASNA, similar to other organizations, has issued a statement on Israel labeling of top Palestinian human rights organizations as terrorist organizations. So please share the FASNA statement, or do share other statements that have come to you. Sabil, in coalition with a number of Palestinian Christian organizations, we also issued a statement. Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, Beit Selim has also issued a strong statement. So please do share all of these statements of organizations that you know and you respect. So the link, there is a link shared in chat, and the information is available in the chat. We will give you a few minutes just to send a number of emails or to share the statements.
Thank you so much for participating and supporting these organizations doing really important work. Please let us know if you come up with any other ideas or actions that you and your organizations may come up with in the next coming days or weeks. We would love to hear about them. And I'm going to pass it back to Omar to give us an update on what's been happening in Palestine.
Thank you, Hannah. Ryan, can you please share the PowerPoint? So please, if you are not part of our Wave of Prayer list, which gives you an up-to-date information, what's happening, please do subscribe. You can email us and we could add you to the list. You are already aware, this is a very serious development. It's going to already Palestinian civil society organizations and human rights organizations inside Israel have been saying for many years that there is a shrinking space of freedom, even to issue reports. We're not able to stop. We Palestinians feel we're not able to stop the crimes that are happening in our country. And now they're also saying you're not also allowed to speak about them. This is very frustrating and a serious development. Next slide, please. So in Ikrith, last week we mentioned that there's two famous villages that were entirely Christian before 1948, Kufar Bir'am and Ikrith, that they got depopulated. Although the percentage of the population has remained and became internal refugees inside Israel, and they've been fighting through the Israeli High Court, and they have a court order that says they should go back to their villages. Israel has blocked the High Court decision for security reasons for over 60 years now. The descendants of the villages have asked the world community to come and to join them in prayer. And this Saturday there were prayer services all over the world for Ikrith, but also the people who have remained walked into their village and prayed in their village. Next slide. So this just shows the vigil with candles, with prayers and chants. The people of the village are still determined to go back to their villages. And they are not unique. There's millions and millions of Palestinian refugees who still share the dream or ask for the right of return to be implemented, whether they are internal refugees inside Israel or outside. Another sad story, the violence in Israel continues within the Palestinian community, community that are citizens of Israel. There's over 1.2 million Palestinians who live inside Israel. Asim Salti was shot and killed almost every weekend. We have multiple numbers of our young people who get shot and killed, which is seen as Arab on Arab violence. And the Israeli police, with all of their security and intelligence, refuse to take decisive action. Next slide. The communities are, the Palestinian community and the families are saying, if the life of our young people is not normal, they've started the campaign going into the streets, blocking the streets and asking the Israeli police to arrest the criminals and the gangs. Please move on. Today, as it is, it's the today is the Palestinian Women National Day. Palestinians all over the country have been launching campaigns to remember the 34 Palestinian women prisoners who are inside Israeli jails. There's many concerns, as we will hear now from Sandrine, of Palestinian women, but it's the Palestinian freedom fighters or the Palestinian prisoners inside are seen as the symbol of Palestinian women. Next slide. There are still 7 Palestinian prisoners who are going through hunger strike. They are all they have been arrested by Israel detainees. Israel does not charge them or let them know why they are being arrested on periods of 6 months that they get also renewed. This is very frustrating. some of the prisoners have been for over 104 days under hunger strike, and their health is seriously deteriorating. Next slide, please. So there is very close to Al-Aqsa Mosque, to the eastern southern side of the old city. There's a cemetery called Al-Yusufiyya. It's where many of the community and also Jordanian prisoners were at times of war were buried. Israel started demolishing the cemetery in order to build a biblical park. The community went into to court, and they've asked for a stop for this nonsense. Yesterday, Israel renewed the working orders and just said they've denied the request of the families. And some of the people, it's many of the people of Jerusalem have family members who are buried in this cemetery. And the way that they are using bulldozers and caterpillars to really to work in the cemetery is extremely disrespectful for the people. And there was a video, we will be showing it now, and this is how we will end the news of the week, of a mother who had her son a few years ago buried in the cemetery. And it shows how the Israeli police came and kicked her out and demolished her son's grave. His name is Ala, her deceased son. Please, Ryan.
Thank you, Omar. We now turn to our main issue of the week, the effect that conflict has on women. And we invite our special guest, Sandrine Amer, and the YWCA of Jerusalem. As she speaks, if you think of a question, please type it in the chat, and I will try to ask as many of them as I can when we get to the Q&A. Sandrine, the floor is yours.
Ahlan. I'll be sharing my screen. So, Ahlan wa sahlan, we say in Arabic. Thank you for your interest to learn about women more living in conflict, and about the Young Women Christian Association in general, and of Jerusalem in specific. Throughout my presentation, I'll be giving a background about the organization, its history, and areas of work. I'll be giving some background as well about Palestinian women in the context we're living in, and going back to the main fields we're working at the YWCA of Jerusalem. And as Hannah said, any questions I'd be pleased to answer afterwards within the Q&A. So the YWCA of Jerusalem is a membership-based organization registered locally as an NGO, non-governmental organization, and affiliated through YWCA Palestine with the World YWCA movement located in Geneva. The YWCA was first initiated in Palestine in 1893. More than 120 plus years. by informal groups of Christian women who were meeting in Jaffa and Jerusalem as YWCA groups, and later officially established in Jerusalem in 1918. The mission of YWCA of Jerusalem is to empower young women and girls as leaders in their communities, who understand, demand, and protect their rights, and who participate in the decision-making on equal footing with men in all aspects of their lives as they contribute to building a democratic and free civil society. Currently, the YWCA in Palestine is situated in 4 localities in Jerusalem, Ramallah, Jericho, and Bethlehem, together with 2 multifunctional community centers in Jalazon Refugee Camp and Aqba Jabal Refugee Camp. The YWCA of Jerusalem current premises, where I am now, was established in the early 60s and currently houses a vocational training center, child development center, child and women and even youth sports activity center, and multi-purpose halls. So this is us located in the Sheikh Jarrah. The YWCA clusters all its programs under 4 main thematic areas: the economic development, the very historical program, women's rights program, youth leadership training and civic engagement, and children education and cognitive learning. Within the children education and cognitive learning, we have 3 interventions. We have kindergarten and nursery, welcoming children from 3 months up to 4 years old. We implement during the summers art-based skill camps for children up to 15 years old. And we have, along the academic year, extracurricular activities for children, providing different acrobatic, gymnastic, ballet, dance for male and female children, with the vision of motivating the sense of cognitive learning, of creativity, of feeling that we are in a very safe space. That's the most important thing for us. Within the youth leadership training and civic engagement, we focus, of course, as a youth community, we need to have well-educated youth to represent us in the communities, in the different spheres and sectors in the community. And we need also to promote the volunteerism sense in our community. It's a little bit diminishing in all communities. Specifically in ours, because there's a need to survive within our context, living under occupation and the economic restraints. So we're trying to boost more and more the sense of volunteerism and belonging to the community. Within the women's rights program, we work a lot on gender-based violence programs. We live within a patriarchal and male-dominant system. So our females need awareness about rights, about responsibilities, about duties, right for education, right for labor, right to say, I want to marry, I don't want to marry. We face a lot of early marriage phenomena as well. That could lead to early divorce in many cases. There are sexual harassments based on gender and many other forms as well of family violence-based violence. So we do run many programs on the awareness and advocacy programs. And the economic development, I'll be talking more in an elaborate form at the last part of my presentation. Relating to the topic of our session today about women, I would like to give a background about the role of Palestinian women living under Israeli occupation in public and political life. Here you see some dolls. These dolls are from a project that the YWCA runs. It's called Fabrics of Our Lives. These dolls symbolize the women who were refugees from different locations of Palestine, sharing their story. You can Google a Fabric of Our Life and explore more about this project. Definitely the issue of women is fundamental in the public life for all societies around the world. Whatever their differences in customs, traditions, and concepts. This topic is an important platform in the field of research, studies, conferences, and international forums. Women's rights, recognition, empowerment, and their active role in society have emerged as fundamental to social development and progress in political and economic life. The marginal role of women is a result of the dominance of males on economic life. Female empowerment does not demand the marginalization of men, but comes through the promotion of women's economic role and active position in the labor market to achieve equity in employment, wages, and training. Therefore, the social, economic, and political empowerment of women are prerequisites for national development. Palestinian women have to endure two major challenges. As I said, the male-dominant patriarchal system, as well as living under occupation. Palestinian women are living under stress, in poverty, homes are destroyed, lands razed or expropriated, children sick, husband imprisoned, fathers killed, and more. And despite all, they try to plant seeds of hope by fulfilling their daily social role and by participating in political and everyday resistance. Since the Nakba in 1948, Palestinian women have been denied basic human rights, security, free expression and movement, a safe and healthy environment, and education. They became refugees in their own land and abroad, bearing burdens beyond the capacity most women can bear anywhere. Under occupation, the struggle of women is daily to endure, survive, and provide the best for the families and children as spouses, mothers, caregivers, fighters, nurses, workers, and teachers. Of the Palestinian land. Here, I'm just sharing with no explanation the situation, the context where Palestinians live within, and more specifically to women. Settlements, there are more now. The wall, the separation barrier, the settler bypass roads. This is the West Bank map. The movement restrictions. All of this, of course, restricts the mobility, access to work, access to healthcare, family reunion, reach to churches or mosques, all the basic human rights. As said, about half of the Palestinian society are females. The estimated population of which 249 females. And it's around 1 of 3 males for every 100 females. Percentage of youth in Palestine was about 22%, around 1.16 million. Of course, currently up to 2018, the last record that I could get, it's around, we have females. The fertility rate in Palestine is high compared to other countries due to early marriage, as I mentioned before, especially for females and their desire to have children, in addition to the customs and traditions prevailing in the Palestinian society. However, there are some indicators that it's begun to decline. Total fertility rates decreased in Palestine from 4.1 births per woman in 2014 to 3.8 births per woman in 2019. Of which 3.8 births in the West Bank and 3.9 births in Gaza Strip. Regarding female households, the proportion of female-headed households in Palestine rose from 8.8 in 2007 to 9.2% in 2014 and 11% in 2020. Lately, we can notice a high enrollment rates of females in secondary stage and higher education. The scholastic year 2019-2020 showed that male enrollment was 73% compared to female enrollment, which was 92%. As for higher education, 61 out of the total number of students were females. Regarding the labor force and women in public life, there are decreased in the participation rate in the labor force among women and men. The participation for both in 2020, of course, as a result of the lockdown that were implemented following the pandemic compared to previous years. In 2020, the percentage for women participation was 16%. In 2019, it was 18%. Knowing that the rate of males participation in the labor force reached 65% in 2020 compared to 70% in 2019. According to the Labor Force Survey 2020, participation rate of women with disabilities in labor force in Palestine was only 2% of the total women with disabilities, compared to 23% of the total men with disabilities. So we notice a huge gap here. The majority of women work in the service sector, health, education, and public sector. Youth in this age group, 1929, who hold intermediate diploma and above suffer from the most form of unemployment. Unemployment rate among youth graduates of those who hold intermediate diploma reached 54%. 69% is for females, whereas 39% for males. The unemployment rate among participated women in the labor force was 40% compared to 23% among men in 2020. Of course, it's happening in many countries, but it's still very high, noticeably in Palestine. We see discrimination in the wage, in the monthly wage and the daily wage. Data in 2020 indicated that about 28% of wages employed workers in the private sector earn a monthly wage less than the minimum average, as 25% was for women as well. And additionally, that they don't have really contracts and labor rights that safeguards their rights. Of course, political constraints restrict women's access and opportunities to work. It's obvious that the imposition of movement restrictions, as per the map that I just shared with you, on Palestinians and the building of the separation wall have added further obstacles, limiting women's opportunities from moving easily without any risks or dangers. Of course, women face from the mismatch between education and labor market skills, the patriarchal structure of the Palestinian family that gives men advantage and authority over women, and the labor law, as I said, it's not really safeguarding the rights of women. And mostly in particular, the Palestinian workers inside Israel or inside the settlements. Just last week, maybe Omar should have mentioned it in his brief as well. The Israeli court was persecuting an Israeli soldier for harassing a Palestinian woman over the years just to give her an entry permit to Israel. Political participation of women. Palestinian women have played several roles in the Palestinian political system and have enrolled in decision-making positions since the beginning of the century. However, the Here, I just like to share with you the four stages of Palestinian women participation. Stage 1, pre-1948, from 1917, women in Palestine participated in demonstrations against the Balfour Declaration. In 1920, women were included in a delegation that met with the British High Commissioner. Stage 2, from 48 to 1967, after the founding of the PLO in 64, a new era. I'm back. So, as I said, within this period, women started to work in more organized methods, allowing their participation in the national work. 1987 up to date, women interest really only came to the fore through the establishment of independent NGO and women centers, which were founded in the 90s. These centers have addressed issues such as domestic violence, personal status laws, honor killing, and forced marriage. I just like to note as well that currently there are around 35 women, females in prisons, in Israeli jails. 11 out of them are mothers. 6 out of them are wounded, who are not being given the healthcare needed. And 3 among them are detained by administrative detention with no fair trial. Currently, there's a humble participation of women in decision-making positions. According to 2020 data, the participation of women in decision-making positions is still limited comparing to men's. These data showed the following. 5% of the Palestinian Central, 5% of females are at the Palestinian Central Council members. 11% are of the Palestinian National Council members. 13% are Council of Ministers members are women. 11% is the percentage of the women ambassadors in the diplomatic service. 1 woman holds the position governor out of 16 governors. According to the General Personnel Council data up to February 2021, the percentage of women's participation in the civil sector reached 45% of the total employees in the public sector. The gap is reflected when talking about those who hold the rank of Director General and higher, where this percentage reached 14% of women compared with 86% of men. Of course, the expectations of Palestinian women mostly is about the form of the Palestinian state. We have a state, but what kind of state we aspire to have? A secular that respects all, that respects women's rights, that eliminates all forms of violence against women, especially honor killing. The role and participation and representation of women. Surely we want to reach a place where we don't need a quota to safeguard our participation in the government during the elections. The hope, as I said, of a secular state with no discrimination based on gender, religion, the hope, I'm sorry, I got caught with a cough. So as I said, as the hope to live in equal rights and the hope to live in freedom and dignity. You see my screen? Just please confirm, Hannah.
We can't see your screen. No.
Hannah?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you now.
We can't see your screen.
You can?
No, if you could share it again.
Oh, I'm sorry. So the hope to live in freedom and dignity is the expectations of Palestinian women to live with equal rights, of a secular state with no discrimination based on gender, religion, and the ability to participate actively, freely, and to represent women in the decision-making body, and to have a state that respects all equally. As I said, I'll be explaining more about the economic empowerment within East Jerusalem context. East Jerusalem, since the occupation in 1967, Israel have sustained military and civil control of East Jerusalem. Currently, about 300,000 Palestinians live in East Jerusalem, between the wall, checkpoints, and closures. Communities in East Jerusalem have become very fragmented, spatially, economically, and socially. Israeli settlement expansion continues at the heart of the Palestinian communities in East Jerusalem, which have put residents in an even more increased risk of violence and displacement. And similar to other neighborhoods of East Jerusalem, the Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood, where the YWCA building is located, is targeted by the Israeli government through settlement expansions and confiscation of Palestinian houses, evacuation of its residents, and handing over to Israeli settlers. Anyone who have visited our building could see that our just next door neighbor are Israeli settlers that has evicted Palestinian families from their house. Moreover, the Israeli government uses the arnona, the property tax, and the law of absentees, as well as religious shrines, as excuses to confiscate Palestinian Arab lands and property in Jerusalem. Here, I would just like to share our story as YWCA. we face an issue with the Israeli ministry regarding the property tax. We normally get exempted 2/3 and pay 1/3, being a public serving the public. For the last 4 years, the issue has been stuck, and they've been asking us to pay the full amount per year, which has put really a huge burden on us. It's difficult. It's part of the forms and pressures put on the Palestinian organizations, because basically the civil society in East Jerusalem is the acting body in the absence of the Palestinian Authority in East Jerusalem. The civil society here is the body, let's say, that's giving care for health, care for education, for economic empowerment, for children's rights, protection rights, awareness. So looking just into East Jerusalem, you can see that many of the big institutions and associations have moved out of Jerusalem due to many factors. One of them is their ability to exist really here, or to own an organization, a building to conduct its activities from. It's really became very tough to do that. The occupancy cost is high. The limitation on your type of work also is really, and the surveillance is very high on the type of work that any Palestinian NGO would do. And it just comes in line with what Omar has really shared with you at the beginning of this session about classifying 6 important NGOs as terrorists. These are NGOs that works for human rights in all aspects. So it's important really, I urge you and invite you really to learn more about the civil society organizations working in East Jerusalem and the struggles that we face just to keep on going. I always say that me coming to the building every day, to this premises, to run the activities is a form of resilience for us as NGOs, a very historical NGO, as you know, been here for more than 100 years in the country. This is our resilience, this is our existence, this is our continuity for our important role that we conduct for the public, for the youth, for the women, for the children. And it's not really taken for granted that we are still here. It takes lots of efforts, lots of wisdom to remain as individuals and to remain as NGOs. Of course, I talk to you with very heartful feelings because it means a lot to me. I'm a Jerusalemite. I've seen lots of the changes going onto this city. I've seen the changes and the difficulties happening to families, to NGOs. I've seen the oppression. So as I said, we continue to witness all this land annexation and settlement building that continues to alter the demographic, physical, and cultural makeup of the city. There are increased policies that discriminate against the Palestinian population. These laws are constructed specifically to prevent Palestinian Jerusalemites from developing a united, safe, and flourishing community with a strong identity, culture, and economy grounded in social and community cohesion. Poverty rate among Palestinians in East Jerusalem is estimated at 72.9% according to Israeli statistics in 2018. And women's participation in the labor market is mere 19.9%. The highest unemployment rate for the age group between 15 to 19 years old followed by the age group between 20 to 24. This indicates additional challenges for the younger age groups, especially at times when the market in East Jerusalem is too small to absorb these young employees, and when the Palestinian economy in the remaining West Bank is also suffering from unemployment. Palestinian women in East Jerusalem face particular challenges over and above the factors that negatively affect all Palestinian women. Women in East Jerusalem also have to deal with specific issues related to their own socio-political context, such as contested residency rights, house demolitions and evictions, increase in gender-based violence, and lack of service for women. In addition to daily violence related to occupation policies and practices, women in East Jerusalem suffer from violence and human rights abuses from the very forces within their own society. The economic strangulation of Palestinians by the Israeli powers have thus far resulted in the total dependency on the Israeli entity and further traps the lives of Palestinians. The feminization of poverty and the economic strangulation of Palestinians in occupied East Jerusalem enslaved Palestinians. The feminization of slavery is apparent when watching Palestinian women turn into domestic workers, humiliated, controlled, and oppressed in Israeli public and private entities. Furthermore, Palestinian women face both horizontal and vertical segregation in the labor market, as job opportunities for young women especially are very limited, as they are restricted to few sectors and low status jobs, as mentioned before. The social norms and culture impose additional restrictions on their economic participation and growth, as well as lead to discrimination in wages. The YWCA in Jerusalem has offered economic empowerment, vocational training programs for women since the early 50s. Over the years, it has evolved into a women's rights organization, building the capacity of young women in marginalized communities to understand and demand their rights and advocate for changes in political, social norms and practices to protect those rights. YWCA of Jerusalem faces many challenges to continue operating and providing services in Jerusalem that are as a result of the Israeli policies. For us, our intervention in economic empowerment is a vital form of resilience, as I said, for the Palestinians in East Jerusalem to live in dignity and to enhance the economical and social livelihoods. Our areas of intervention within East Jerusalem, there are 38 localities in Jerusalem Governorate, 10 of which are located within Israeli geographical boundaries, J1, which was annexed forcefully by Israel following its occupation of the West Bank in 1967. With the remaining 28 falling into West Bank, J2, as well, we do work. In J2, there are 16 localities and are run by village councils, 10 by local councils, 1 by a project committee, and 1 by a camp committee. YWC of Jerusalem, as I said, implement economic programs in J1 and J2 that provides skillful training to allow employment or self-employability, in addition to on-job training and employability activities with the private sector. Here you see different pictures of our activities inside our building and out. We target different audiences. We target educated but not employed young females and males between the age 18 and 35 years old, enrolled in our market-driven vocational training diplomas, who finished 12 years of education and seek technical and vocational skills that lead to income generation. We provide diplomas in office management, multimedia, photography, and modern kitchen. For example, in 2020, 70% of our graduates found employment or established their businesses. We also target school dropouts, aged 18 plus, awareness regarding vocational specializations, job shadowings, trainings to train them to becoming a professional and to build their confidence, as they are labeled by their societies as school dropouts. And we do have success stories here. We also target non-educated and unemployed marginalized women aged 20 plus, and we reach out for them. We go to their own communities and we provide a short skill training, of course, to enhance their livelihoods socially and economically. YWCA of Jerusalem remains committed to create women leadership, especially among young women and girls, to realize their full rights and capabilities, and to promote and advance their full participation in decision-making on equal footing with men in all aspects of life. We call for protection and the implementation of Security Council Resolution 1325 on women, peace, and security, and urge human rights defenders to protect our community. We are calling to protect women and girls who are particularly vulnerable to various forms of state violence. Thank you for listening. I want to share with you a short video.
Knowledge is the tool for social engagement in a democratic environment. This is the certainty with which the Young Women's Christian Association has been working for years by taking ownership for themselves of the motto of the World Movement, empowering women, promoting equality.
جمعية الشابات المسيحية هي جمعية نسوية.
YWCA is a membership-based female association established in Palestine in 1893 and formally registered in 1918. Its main objective is the development and appreciation of Palestinian women to achieve a free and democratic civil society.
With its headquarters in Jerusalem and other locations in Ramallah and Jericho, as well as in 2 different refugee camps, the association uses the collaboration of local, national, and international organizations and works in different areas. The building houses a kindergarten and a childcare for children from 3 months to 4 years of age and offers several training courses.
First of all, the Vocational Training Center aims at empowering young men and women into obtaining jobs in Jerusalem. So we train them in jobs that are needed and wanted in the Jerusalemite market, and we continue working with them until we employ them. Our employment rate is very high. Our employment rate is 70%, while in Palestine the employment rate for women is 19%.
تعتمدي كتير على حالك، يعني بيعطوك قد ايه لازم تكوني واثقة بحالك وكيف لازم انت تديري.
Here we learn to get back on our feet, to manage an office, to connect with people. This place gives us practical and not just theoretical skills, such as typing, English, accounting.
The center offers several professional specialties: office management, modern kitchen, graphic design, photography, and video making, plus programming for the Android technology. It also offers the possibility to learn different languages. One of the most popular classes is, moreover, the Hebrew language class.
I want to learn Hebrew to be able to talk to people and answer their questions. This course is very useful and will last a year. I am studying office management and the Hebrew language because this is the language we need in the workplace. That is why, in my opinion, you need to know this language. This is a great association. It helps the students improve their level of education and skills and encourages them to be independent.
Every story is unique, May Amire emphasizes. Whether it is a divorced woman, a girl who had difficulty in college, a boy with learning problems, everyone needs to be looked at, welcomed, and valued for their own unique individuality.
The aim is to give these young men and women an opportunity, hope first of all, that they are capable, an opportunity for them to get a good job. And this is the aim. And then they can stay in Jerusalem. They will not think of leaving it. We give them hope. And then we give them a job.
Thank you so much, Sandrine. I really appreciated that.
You're welcome.
We'd now like to introduce our action for the day and give everyone a few minutes to get started on it before we do the question and answer period. So as you can see on the slide, we'd like you to think about starting a Women in Black style vigil and sharing information about Resolution 1325 with women's organizations. So share Resolution 1325, call a women's organization in your area and tell them about Resolution 1325 and ask them to speak about Palestinian women this week in honor of UNSC Resolution 1325. Sandrine, I want to just invite you, if there's anything you'd like to add about this action, about any ideas, extra ideas you'd have, or what people can be doing to bring awareness to the effects of the occupation on women.
As I said, we share your stories, do actions for the members at the legislative councils, at the decision makers. We need you to reach justice. We need this international collaboration and cooperation. Alone, we cannot achieve it. It's along the history we have seen many people have gone through wars and people have helped people. It's now your turn to help us regain our freedom. There are many actions that you can do. You can write emails, you can post things on your Facebook. I'm sure you don't have surveillance like us. You can write letters, you can, I doubt you'll do that, but you can go to TikTok. I'm just trying to refresh the spirit here. Maybe it's been too long for you, but use all the platforms possible. If you are really pro-justice, I will not say pro-Palestinians. Here we are pro-justice. We are occupied according to international law. We witness lots of injustices every day. Restrictions on our freedom of expression, freedom of movement, freedom of religion. I live by the Christian quarter. During the Holy Saturday, by the Orthodox calendar, I cannot reach the Holy Sepulchre, and I am just few steps away from there because of the plenty checkpoints. We face violence, verbal and really physical violence. A woman faces harassment. Students going to school face harassments. Women face abortion on checkpoints. They don't really get the needed healthcare they do need to require. There are borders on our hearts because there is the family reunion restrictions. You know, if I'm a Jerusalemite, I would need to think twice if I would like to marry one from West Bank, because it will be a forever a procedure to be able to bring the spouse to Jerusalem. So it's all forms of restrictions. Help us remove them. Palestinians are known that they are a hopeful population. We're always hopeful. You see us smiling, you see us laughing, making jokes. We need to live. But what's the quality of the life we need to acquire? It's within your help. Your help, your prayers, and your action. We need your action. Come visit. You're all welcome to visit me at the Christian Quarter, to visit me in Sheikh Jarrah, to visit the YWCA, this very historical association that gives to the Palestinian community. Before the creation of, let's say, before 1948. You know what that means. Thank you, Hannah.
Thank you so much. We're going to get to work now.
I see you,
So-
Radia.
Sorry?
I see Radia Kopti just signing the victory sign for me.
Wonderful. So your instructions are on the screen. Please note that Zoom does not allow on-screen links, so all the links that you need will be in the chat. We'll give you about 5 minutes to get started, figuring out what you can do to bring attention to Resolution 1325 and the women constantly affected by living under conflict. We'll then come back for a short Q&A. Thank you so much for your time today, Sandrine. We've gone a little bit long today, so I'm just going to ask you one question, but we will send you the other questions via email. And if you do want to answer them in writing, we'll share them with everyone in our next newsletter. So I'm going to ask you, over the years, your many years involved with the YWCA, do you see any change in the male mindset towards women in the Palestinian community? And what ways are men encouraged to change their understanding of their relationship with women?
Elise, thank you for your question. It's not easy. We were discussing this earlier today or even yesterday, that many of the political parties, whether it's Israeli or Palestinians, you know, or even, yeah, I was discussing it with a French lady. So even in France, it's how to use religion in politics and how is this affecting the people. And that's exactly what's been happening here. For the last 20 years, people have gone more extreme into extreme, and that was the influence of the political parties. People were fed up of, you know, the stable position, the corruption here and there, you know, and the many issues happening, and went to support an extreme political party, which used, let's say, in this context, Islam, for example, as a coverage. So it influenced the behavior, the actions. The Palestinian community, if you see the pictures, I have many pictures in black and white here for the YWCA legacy. People, mixed people wearing regular, you know, not very extra traditional, not the traditional, I mean, you know, the religious clothes. and people had more tolerance and accepting. Today, due to many factors, among which mainly is the occupation, and as I said, the harassment that people endure from the Israeli system, made people and families more conservative. That's why we are conducting the outreach programs, because many of these women are not going to pursue their education because their families, they don't want them, for example, to cross the checkpoints because they are afraid from harassment, or because they don't want to be late in transportation, or etc., etc. So have we seen any change in the male mindset? Here and there, yes, but not to the extent that we do really want to see, because it's a complete package. It's not only us. There's the existence of the occupation, and there is also, as I said, the extremism that is being forced through the political parties that's using religion as an excuse. So it's a combination. But our methodology of work in our programs includes always men. Historically, YWCA targeted women all the time, but this have changed. Now we do target males. We do need, we don't target senior males. I'm sorry for all the seniors here. But we target, I see you, Rick. So that's among you as well. So we really target all the community, as I said, children, youth, women, young women, and elderly women. And when we go to the outreach programs, specifically in the gender-based programs, gender-based violence programs, we try also to hold discussions with the community. I personally had a discussion at Shafat refugee camp. It's really a very tricky area. It has, the authorities there have no authority or really they are not there. It's by local committees, and there's the UNRWA there, and there is a high rate of early marriage, around 40%. It's the early marriage rate in Jerusalem in specific, and there more specifically. And I had these discussions with men one-to-one, and bear in mind that my name is really not really Arabic, that I come from a Christian name association, despite the fact that we serve non-Christian mostly. But despite all that, I had really this discussion with these people about the importance for females to pursue their education, to work, and not to have early marriage. And the stereotype is the female is to blame. She must be married, to be at home. She's the one who's harassing men to that extent, So we never give up. As I said, I'm even hopeful in my professional career, not only as a being under occupation. We do work, of course. Reforms needs to happen within the Palestinian government. We have a paralyzed legislative council. It's not in action. So we don't really have good reforms. It always takes for so long. Our Palestinian Authority, they ratify all the, like CEDAW or 1325, they accept them with no reservation, but are they in action? Are they being reflected in our procedures, in our mindset, in our regulations, in our laws? We're not yet there, unfortunately. But that's the importance of the civil society. That's the importance of the Palestinian Union, the Palestinian activism, female activism, and we'll keep it going. We shall overcome.
Yes, يعطيك العافية.
Who was that now?
That was me.
Hannah.
Yes. Thank you so much.
We shall overcome. We shall overcome one day. بكفي. It's enough.
Thank you
It
so
took
much,
more than
Sandrine.
my time, but it's my privilege, it's my honor to be with all of you. Thank you all for dedicating your time, really, because you believe in humanity, you believe in justice, and you believe in our cause. شكرا.
Shukran كثير. As Sandrine said, thank you all for being here and for sharing your time with us. A link to the video of this gathering, along with all the links shared today, will be available on the Kumi Now website and on YouTube in a day or so, and it will be shared in the next newsletter. You can subscribe to Kumi Now on YouTube and subscribe to our newsletter to make sure you receive them. We would greatly appreciate it if you shared this amazing session with your friends and colleagues, as well as information on our future sessions. Next week, we will focus on anti-Muslim and anti-Islamic discrimination around the world. If you'd like to be reminded of the online gatherings an hour before they begin, you can register for email reminders at kuminow.com/online using the form at the bottom of the page. So thank you again, and we hope to see you back here in a week's time. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Sandrine. Good night.